I know a lot of you know this, the 4 aspects of your stages in the business. Your role as the owner in the business changes as the business grows. There's actually about 8 of them, but I've simplified them down to 4. You all have heard this before. Number 1, you're a laborer. You're out in the field. You're doing the things, getting your business done, jobs, mowing, etc. Then you kind of start growing your business. You become kind of office manager. You're answering phones. You're doing emails. You're in your truck. You're doing everything above that, like hiring and higher level stuff, but you're mostly like emails, communication, billing, scheduling, etc. And as your business grows, you actually step into the sales and estimates side of things because now you hire someone for the office, all right? Sometimes this gets jumbled up if you have a family member and you get them in sooner in the office person right from the get. But 3rd spot usually for an owner is going to be sales and estimates, especially if that's their forte as an owner, their personality. Number 4 is you become CEO, and at that level you've now hired an estimator. So you're going to hear from Lee, who's our estimator at Augusta locally, later today, when we stop talking about that role of an estimator. But what we're really talking about right now is number 4. How do we get to number 4 where you're CEO? Well, you don't have to be in the day-to-day operations. You have the estimates taken care of. You have the operational side taken care of from the office, and you have laborers out in the field. All right, so how do we get there? The analogy that I use, excuse me, because a lot of you are at 1 and 2. So here, when I talk about those 4 stages, who feels like they as the owner are still in number 1? In some part, way, or fashion, you're a laborer. Just raise your hand, there's no shame. Cool. Who thinks they're in number 2 in terms of being like office manager, you're really not in the field very much anymore? Okay, and then who's feeling like, hey, I'm an office person, I'm really focused on sales, estimate, and growing the business? Raise your hand. Okay, and then who feels like they're kind of in a CEO level position? You have the laborers, estimators, everything. Fantastic. All right, so the analogy that I use, because a lot of you are 1, 2s, and 3s, and you're like, 4 doesn't really apply to me. If you're in 3, this is like the most important part of this whole weekend, because you need to switch from 3 to 4. But if you're even 1 and 2, this is not a time to tune out, because this is my analogy that I use. The sooner you start thinking about becoming a number 4 and building your business accordingly, the better. So the analogy I use is like when you build a house. When you build a house, if you're planning on putting a steel shingle roof on that house, excuse me, on top of the roof, like I don't mean like steel in terms of like the big sheets. I'm talking like the steel shingles that are like 1/2 inch thick and just like super duper heavy. They come in trucks and pallets and they're super, super heavy. If you're gonna put that much weight on the top of that building, you have to build the structure differently from the ground up. All right? So if I started doing my foundation and then I started building my framing and I'm like, oh, I'm actually gonna put a roof on that's like 10,000 pounds heavier. Guess what? Bad time to think about that. Because your foundation might not be ready for it, your studs are 2x4s instead of 2x6s. Like, there's a lot of problems if you just slap a massive weight on the top of that building. Does everyone agree? It's making sense? The same thing goes for you as the owner stepping out of day-to-day operations. It's a huge weight on the business. All right, for you to step out of day-to-day operations is a huge weight on the business. And if you're at 1 and 2 right now in those stages, you need to build the business correctly from the ground up to sustain that weight once it's been put on. All right, so unfortunately, none of us are like out of the business from day 1. We leave the business, i.e. we put the roof on, but if the business has not been built in a way that supports that happening, it all falls apart. Sometimes when guys start thinking about like, oh, I'm gonna work outside the field, I don't need to be in day-to-day operations, they leave the business, i.e. they put the roof on, and everything just falls apart. Like, the roof is better. A steel roof is better. It's heavier, it lasts like 50 years, it's the best thing in the world. But it's heavier, and it's harder, and it's more expensive. Okay? But if you're in that 1 and 2, and you're just like, I'm just like growing my business, doing the foundation, I'm still installing the studs, start building it with the roof in mind, i.e. you leaving the business. What that causes you to do is start thinking about, okay, when I hire an estimator, I know right now I'm the only guy in my business, but when I hire an estimator, I need to start thinking about the systems and how am I doing my estimates to make that job easy for him. All right? So the reason I was able to do it fairly quickly is because right from day 1 I knew I was not going to be in the business of mowing lawns. Right? I knew from day 1 we were going to eventually franchise it, and I also could not physically mow because I had allergies to the grass, which is a problem. For about 3 weeks it was taping eyelids, multiple shirts, rashes, like a lot. So I knew from day 1 I couldn't be in the field. Right? That would kick me into office manager pretty fast. Right? But building that foundation, thinking about it early on in the process is going to help you a lot.